My next guest, the theatre veterans, featuring in dozens of shows spanning more than 40 years, including Beauty and the Beast, Les Mis, Thoroughly Modern Millie, Shrek, Calendar Girls, and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, to name but a few. But today they're here to chat about Gypsy, opening next month at the Round in Nunawading. Welcome to Showtime, Lizzie Matjacic and Mark Monroe. Firstly, Lizzie, did I get that pronunciation right?
You were pretty close, Andrew, pretty close. It's Matjacic, but it was pretty close. Better than many I've heard.
I'm sorry to your ancestors. Lizzie, I'd love to start talking about Broadway to Life, which is something you not only performed in, but I believe you also co-wrote.
Yes, yeah, that was a really special experience. We did it as a fundraiser for the Cancer Council Relay for Life fundraiser, and it was really on the theme of life, and it was life affirming. And we managed to get a bunch of theatre mates together who we've performed with, many times before, and we wrote the material to give it a kind of a story and a flow using obviously musical theatre songs that we performed. And it was really magic. It went over really well, and we even won an award for it, which was very special.
Congratulations. It sounds fascinating. And Mark, while Lizzie was doing that, I believe you were a Moomba monarch.
Oh, that was a very, very, very long time ago. 1989. I was actually the Prince of Moomba.
There's no statute of limitations on Moomba monarchy, let me tell you.
Well, the thing is, there has never been a prince or a princess since, so I do believe that I would still be the reigning Prince of Moomba.
How hard do you have to muck it up in order to be the last one?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you've got me there.
Well, so are you saying because of you, Moomba became a republic?
That is correct. Yeah. My king that year was Con the Fruiterer, and I think he was the last king, and after that it officially became the monarch of Moomba.
Yeah, it did change, but I've growing up in the 80s, I've seen a lot of kings of Moomba, a queen of Moomba. But what does the Prince of Moomba do?
Well, it was a competition through 3KZ radio. So we're talking the olden days, which then became, I think, KZFM now would be Gold FM. Yeah, and so it was a competition through there, and we actually got to perform with the Life Be In It dancers and Rob the Swaggy, and then there was a big crowning ceremony on the stage with Con the Fruiterer.
And for those that don't know what things like Con the Fruiterer means, Moomba Monarchs and the Moomba Parade was a massive deal in especially in the 70s and 80s in Melbourne. Floats going down the street, sort of like the Macy's parade in New York. It was massive. It was something that you'd just go to. You'd picnic all day and you'd go down and you'd watch it. It was live on TV back when there was TV. It was massive.
Yep, and we walked the parade and everything as well. So yeah, it had the full spectrum of Moomba, and it was pretty much a VIP of Moomba that year. We were being given all free passes for everything, and also being paid to do shows, and that was at such a young age as well.
Well, I'm old enough to be super impressed, Mark.
I'm glad somebody knows about it all.
Lizzie, when you're not on stage, you're a counselling psychologist. How does that impact you sort of delving into characters and really sort of getting into the psyche of the characters that you're performing on stage?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, thank you. Look, I think it really helps me. And I often do say that the skills that are required for me to be a good counselling psychologist are the same skills that are required to be a good actor. It is really putting yourself inside someone else's shoes and trying to see the world from their perspective, understand, what their motivations might be. And I love to deep dive into characters. So, I'm always like either making up a backstory for myself, or in the case of this show, there's a lot of material available that you can sort of delve into to sort of understand the real people that this story is based on, to kind of help with the characterization. So I do like some good layers. Like the psychologist in me really does like some good layers.
And the flip side of that, how many fellow cast members come to you with their problems backstage?
Do you know what? The worlds don't overlap like that. Like, it's more common outside of theatre for people to say to me, oh, you're a psychologist. What am I thinking? And I go, no, that would be a psychic. I'm not a psychic. I'm a psychologist, a little bit different. No, look, I find actually that most people are surprised at the job that I do. A lot of people in theatre are teachers, because teaching is a profession in which you get to do a little bit of performing stuff. They might be the performing arts teacher at their school, sort of thing. So being a psychologist is a little bit unusual in musical theatre. I don't think I know any others in musical theatre.
But yeah, handy skills to have. Speaking of handy skills to have, Mark, when you're not on stage, I believe we might have seen you maybe on screen, on the small screen, on shows like Big Girls Blouse and Neighbours, to name a couple. How do you feel different in a television studio as opposed to on stage?
I much prefer the on-stage stuff, and I really have kind of focused my career in that direction. There's such a subdued aspect of working in television that it's almost as though they're whispering and stuff like that as well, where I really get to enjoy the over-the-top aspect of the theatre and the facial expressions, and because that camera, it captures everything, and theatre, you just get to be very over the top.
And do you feel that connection with the audience is far greater, far more intimate with live theatre as well?
Oh, completely. You get that immediate reaction and response to what you're doing, and what I love about the art of
that can be a blessing or a curse, though, can't it?
That is correct. But what you can also do is, after a while, you get to gauge how an audience is feeling, and you can change the mood in a scene and manipulate the way that they're feeling. And that's a pretty powerful feeling.
Yeah, look, I imagine it is. And just the rush of live theatre audience, as opposed to, waiting a couple of months to get a reaction on something that was filmed in a studio.
And then generally it's, just one review from somebody who liked it, didn't like it.
And you're both coming together now to work on Gypsy, which will be coming up in October at the Round in Nunawading. For those that don't know Stephen Sondheim and Julie Stone, what's Gypsy about?
Well, it's based on a memoir that was written by a striptease artist, burlesque artist called Gypsy Rose Lee, very famous in her day. And she really sort of pioneered this kind of intellectual strip where, she wasn't just taking her clothes off, but she was saying very titillating things, really stimulating the imagination of the audience. And that was as much part of the sort of art of it as the taking off of the clothes. But she had an interesting early history, grew up on vaudeville, basically doing vaudeville, with a mother who very much marketed the skills of the two children. So she had a sister called June, her younger sister, who was the little Shirley Temple of the act, blonde ringlets. She was the one that could dance on her toes, she was wearing toe shoes, like ballerina toe shoes from the age of 2, so she was like a very marketable skill for the mother, Rose, who kind of toured them around the country performing in vaudeville, which eventually, of course, died once talking pictures came and audiences preferred to go and see those than to go to vaudeville. Then that's how they ended up in burlesque, because that was one of the few variety style shows, live shows that were still going on. And she sort of fell into becoming a stripper, basically. And the musical focuses a lot on the Mama Rose. And, she's the quintessential stage mother, that's sort of pushing the kids forward and, sing out Louise and all this sort of stuff. And, really manipulating and running things and pushing the kids all the way through, sort of thing. But I think she's quite an interesting character as well. Like, she could be very one note if you just focus on those aspects. But I think, you look into her backstory and, she had a childhood in which she felt quite abandoned, and she's had 3 husbands, and, a lot of things haven't worked out for her in her life, where she, I think, feels quite vulnerable, but is not willing to sort of express that vulnerability. It's all covered up by this very kind of, force of nature, personality that she has. And maybe Mark, do you want to talk about Herbie's role in the story as well?
Yes, I think Herbie's one of the only non-actual people that's kind of in the show. He's kind of a bit of a fictional character. He is the sidekick to Rose. So they meet when the children are young, and he's kind of left the show business industry after 20 years in the business. And him and Rose kind of have this mutual connection immediately, and they both kind of use each other for their own purposes. So Rose uses him to enter back into the entertainment industry, become an agent for the act, and then he kind of uses them as company. I think he's had a pretty lonely life as a salesman, and and just having company around him and the promise of a marriage proposal from Rose.
And Mark, Gypsy was opened on Broadway in 1959. It went to the West End in 1973. It was then revived on Broadway in 1989 and won a Tony Award for that revival. 2024, being as nice as you possibly can be to all the stage mums out there, what do you think's still relevant about Gypsy today that keeps people wanting to see this show? It's this classic.
Well, through music theatre community, I think Gypsy is quite often referred to as the perfect musical. It's such strong characters, especially with Mama Rose. Like, she is the quintessential diva, and it has been revived so many times because it is such a star vehicle for whoever ends up in the role, whether it be Bernadette Peters or Tyne Daly or Audra McDonald, which is going to be upcoming, or Patti LuPone. It's definitely a story about family as well, and I think that resonates across any generations.
And Lizzie, Stephen Sondheim's known for incredibly complex, complicated, beautiful musical theatre works. What's it like getting stuck into something as ambitious and beautiful and classic as Mama Rose in Gypsy?
Yeah. Oh, look, it's definitely a good challenge. I think, the words, sometimes lyrics, I think, are just incredible to work with as an actor because they just convey the emotion so well. So it's very easy to get into the character and convey that through the songs because the lyrics are so powerful. The music, which, many people will know the songs, particularly Rose's Turn, which is, right at the end of the show. They're very emotional songs, and I think it really helps that he is, writes with that complexity. I do find, I was saying this yesterday in rehearsal, that the way that the music is written it's very, like, there's no room to breathe. It's almost like they wrote the score and forgot that a human had to perform it, and that humans have to breathe. And so this is my big challenge of working out when to breathe, because it's often very on one phrase after another. So it's very intense. It's intense music, but there's light and shade with it. Mark and I do some gorgeous duets, that sort of reflect Rose and Herbie's relationship as it's developing, which are a lot softer and sweeter and sort of, slower. And then, the stuff that the kids do is very sort of bright and kind of strong and visually appealing. So I think I can understand why it would be described as the perfect musical, because it just has all the elements, really. It's funny, it's sad, it's entertaining, it's colourful, the costumes are incredible. There's a lot in it that can satisfy audiences.
And Mark, what is it about this version of Gypsy that you think audiences are going to come out and see something a little bit different, than the 2024 version? What can we expect?
Well, Gypsy is not a show that is done very often. I can remember this is probably the fourth production in around 24 years. So even though it's readily available for people to perform, it's not something that is quite often tackled. It is a mammoth show. It's epic on its scale. The sets by Chris Anderson are just absolutely phenomenal. Some of the concepts of what this production team have come up with are incredible, through the train stations and the vaudeville houses. And it's going to be absolutely a spectacular sight to behold.
Gypsy is on at the Round in Nunawading, opening on the 11th of October, limited season until the 20th of October. So book your tickets and you can do that at theround.com.au. And it's Babirra putting it on at the Round in Nunawading. All the very best, Mark and Lizzie. Thank you so much for joining me and chook us for the season.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be with you today.